Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name is Scott. I'll be your host today. I got a great show for you today. I got an interesting guest. I don't know much about her, but I'm going to bring her on in a minute. And I think this is the second time I've said that, back-to-back podcast, where I've had someone that I know she's a runner. I know she's a very interesting personality, so we'll see. We'll have to learn a lot about her. We'll get a chance to do that in just a moment. As always, you can find this and the back episodes of our podcast at our website. It's called ordinarymarathoner.com. Check it out if you get a chance. You can also find me at Twitter, at Ord Marathoner. That's O-R-D Marathoner. Follow me there. I'll follow you back. You can also join our Facebook discussion group over at Ordinary Marathoners. It's a closed group, so you got to add yourself to it. The good news about being a closed group is that, your friends don't see you just constantly talking about your running and posting all the stuff, all your questions about running and comments. You kind of keep it within a running circle, and there's a whole bunch of great supportive people over there. So if you're on Facebook and you're into that kind of thing, or if you don't want to join the conversation, you just want to read what other people have to say, by all means head on over there. We'll approve you into the group right away, and you can participate if you like. What else do we got? Our YouTube channel is up. I totally skipped over that part, but our YouTube channel is up and running. I owed you guys a video. I posted it. Incredibly embarrassing, but, Stephanie made me do it. It's about my failure to finish my 4-hour bike ride. I wound up doing 3. It was kind of interesting putting the thing together, but we're really sort of anxious to keep going with that thing and build it out and see how it works. I don't know. I enjoyed the process and hope it's another vehicle for us to kind of reach out and expand the Ordinary Marathoner influence. And with that, I'm going to bring in our guest. She is known as that RA girl on Twitter, which is at JDRunning2PhD. Tracy Kachur. Tracy, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
Yeah, it's it's kind of interesting. So I don't know when we started following each other on Twitter. I'm not really sure exactly, but I've seen your posts, and I've seen we've kind of crossed paths here and there. So you must have listened. I think you listened to the show that we had with Kate Reed, and you reached out to me and said, "Hey, why don't you have me on the show?" And here you are, like a couple days later.
Yeah. Well, I had just finished my first half marathon last weekend. I did the race 13.1 here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I live. Uh-huh. And it was a big deal for me. So what people who follow me on Twitter as that RA girl, RA stands for rheumatoid arthritis. It's an autoimmune disease. It's not like your arthritis you get as you get older. It's as I said, autoimmune, which means my immune system thinks that there is foreign invaders in my body, and to combat it, it attacks my joints and my organs. So it's very debilitating. There's no cure. You can't take a leave or an Advil to cure it. And over time, it becomes much more debilitating to the point where most people who have the disease end up with deformed joints, inability to walk, or really even to function. So the fact that I am doing a half marathon at this stage is amazing, because I was diagnosed with the disease in 2001. And here we are, 2018.
Wow. So you've been living with it for, I could do the math, 17 years.
Yes.
So, it's interesting.
I first started having symptoms in 1997 after I graduated law school, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. All my tests were coming back negative, but I just had this debilitating pain. I was constantly tired. I could barely walk. And at that time, I was a runner. Actually, I was a runner in high school, and I ran recreationally, and I could barely walk a flight of stairs at that point. So once I got the diagnosis, it was still very difficult to find a treatment that was going to work.
Right. I've heard of it before. I've heard rheumatoid arthritis before. I've heard of it. I didn't really know what it was until you sort of gave us that little explanation. In fact, your Twitter handle, it says that RA girl, and I'm like, that RA girl, like, I'm thinking like an RA at a college dorm or something like that. Like, I'm like, what is RA? And Stephanie was like, oh, it's rheumatoid arthritis. Yeah. And I'm like, that's so, Every once in a while, and I've mentioned this on the show sparingly, but I get something called gout, which is in my toe, and it's sort of a form of arthritis. And I can't believe the pain that it causes me. It causes me like really severe pain. A lot of it's from diet, and stuff like that. And, so I can tell sort of when I'm in a good mode, I don't get it. Like if I'm in a good training mode and I'm exercising, I'm drinking water, I don't get it. And then even the pain itself, it was manageable. It's not totally manageable, but, like taking Advil helps. So I can't imagine, going through what you went through and having to deal with this pain that there's nothing to really help it. Now you mentioned you were a runner though, and so this thing, so it must have like really caused you pain to the point where you couldn't run. So how much, and obviously you just ran a half marathon. So let's connect the dots, and say, how did you go from such intense pain to being able to run a half marathon?
Well, part of it was, at the time, when I was diagnosed, I was living in Buffalo, New York. And just trying to find the right medication cocktail, but also dealing with the cold weather that happens there. Of your podcast viewers know how cold it gets in Buffalo. Also, the high level of stress. I was a practicing attorney at the time, so I was working 70, 80 hours a week, and I just wasn't functioning. And I ended up giving up my legal career because of the illness, because I just wasn't. Just the level of fatigue when your body is constantly beating itself up, you just get exhausted. And days where I would be in so much pain that I couldn't walk too much anymore. My husband and I made the decision to move south for my health. And so we moved to Raleigh, and I found a rheumatologist back in 2010 that helped me find the right drug cocktail. So what I tell people is two things. One, if you ever see a commercial on TV for Enbrel, that's my drug. That's helped give me my life back. The downside is that my immune system is suppressed. So anytime I get sick, it can actually be very dangerous for me because my immune system is very weak.
Right.
And I also take another drug called methotrexate, which is a low-dose cancer drug. So it's like, congratulations, you don't have cancer, but you'll be on cancer drugs for the rest of your life.
Jeez.
But with that, it helped me sort of not get rid of pain 100%. I probably have a pain level of about a 1 or a 2 every day but on some days it's much worse. At that same time, when I was still in Buffalo and trying to transition, I gained 50 to 60 pounds, being on prednisone, which is a steroid, which is a great drug because it makes you feel better, but you pack on pounds. And I just couldn't lose it, the weight. So once I got on the methotrexate and the Advil and I started feeling better, I started walking. And people on my Twitter handle know my dog Jake, my German Shepherd.
Which my dog's name is Jake as well. So
it's a great name, right?
It's perfect.
But Jake needs walkies every day. So we started walking, and one day I just said, I wonder if I could run from one street light to the next street light. That's where it started. And my mantra was just one more street light every week. And over 17 months, I lost all the steroid rate. That was 2013, and in 2014 I ran my first 5K.
Right, there you go. And then and it's been 3 years. So it's been 3 or 4 years since you went from 5K to half. So was it? This is like it's like kind of an incredible journey. It's like, you couldn't walk. You had to give up your career. You couldn't, and then. I don't know. It's amazing that the people that you meet doing this podcast and the things that they overcome. And it sounds really amazing. So
thank you.
Did it take you a long time was your focus, more on sort of achieving like a running type goals, or was your focus, like to lose the weight? What were you driving towards?
Well, when I first started running again, I mean, I kind of remembered the things from the days when I was running regularly. But for me, it was just, can I get to the next street light? And then can I just finish a 5K? I don't care how fast or how slow I have to go. I just want to finish. And after that, I was like, I think I can do this. And part of having an autoimmune disease is listening to your body and knowing how much you can handle. So I can't run every day. I know some people run every day or they do the run streak, and that is just not possible for me. So I have to be very, very mindful about how many miles I run, how my body feels, and knowing when to stop, because even if I do everything that I'm supposed to do, get plenty of rest, eat well, actually exercise helps rheumatoid arthritis, even though it sounds counterintuitive. But even if I do everything right, this disease can trigger a flare and I can be flat on my back, not being able to get out of bed, and have to go on a steroid taper. So I've learned over the years to really pay attention and really focus on what my body is trying to tell me. I think as runners, we have to do that. I have friends that do a lot of crazy things. And I think, you need to listen to your body, because you only have one body, you only have one shot. And to not have that chance to run, having that taken away from me for so long, it really makes me appreciate it now. So I don't want to screw it up by doing something crazy.
So let me ask you this. So for people that may be out there that maybe are suffering from the same thing, or something similar, what was the steps that you took? Was it, it seems like at some point, did you ever feel like totally giving up? Did you ever feel like this is just going to be with me, I'm never going to be able to run? Or were you actively out there looking for a way to fix it?
When I first got sick and I was still living in Buffalo and I was transitioning out of my law practice into teaching law at the college level, I really felt like I had lost that piece of me. Running was something that I had done. It was my way of relieving stress, trying to figure things out. And when it was gone, it really, I did want to give up. I was just like, great, that's one more piece of me that's gone. And I think with the transition of moving and, finding that right cocktail really helped. But at the same time, I know so many people with this disease that they're in such debilitating shape. And that's the sad thing about autoimmune diseases, whether it's RA or lupus or MS, any of the what we call invisible illnesses. One, we don't really look sick, but two, it impacts people so differently. So no two people with RA have the same symptoms, have the same outcomes. It's so difficult to treat. And I think once I started seeing progress, I think that just to me mentally, because there is that depression that comes with chronic illness.
So when you you mentioned that you moved from Buffalo to North Carolina, and you mentioned the cold weather up in Buffalo, and I went to school in Albany, New York, so I'm not quite as bad as Buffalo in terms of the cold weather, but it wasn't exactly warm in December, January, February. How much do you think that the move had to do with it? How much do you think the move into a sort of a warmer climate of North Carolina, helped in sort of, I guess, releasing those joints and making them a little bit, what would you say you attribute versus like the drugs versus the warm weather?
I think it was a little bit of both. When I was first diagnosed, it was a very mild form. And I could see over time where it was progressively getting worse. And I think just the cold weather, the stress of my career, it just wasn't doing anything. And we just felt like we had nothing to lose at that point. We didn't have kids. We moved to Buffalo after we graduated college. My husband and I grew up outside of Pittsburgh. So it was just like, let's just see if we can make this move. And it just kind of, North Carolina just appealed to us. We had friends in Charlotte. So we just said, let's see if it's 4 seasons here. Much more sunny days. There's more chances to be active outdoors. And it still took some time because we moved in 2009 and it wasn't really until 2013. So it wasn't really another 4 years before I really got my feet under me. And also changing careers. I went from being a lawyer to teaching undergraduate law. I was a program director for a paralegal program, and I went back to school to get my PhD, and I'm writing my dissertation right now. So,
wow. I mean, it really, you're a busy person. You're a busy person. It's, I mean, it sounds like, I guess, I hate to say that, but life was tough for you in Buffalo, it sounds like, but you had a career, before the injury started, sort of weighing you down, but it seems like the move just gave you like a really good fresh start, not only in running, but with your, with the pain that you were experiencing. And, you said it took another 4 years to get that taken care of, I guess, or under control. But, you've also moved on career wise. So it sounds like, the move had a really kind of a positive, effect on everything. So, would you agree?
It did, and I don't want to knock Buffalo. That's my adopted hometown. I do miss a lot of things about that area.
Do you miss the Bills?
Whenever I see the Buffalo Marathon, I'm like, I want to go back. And no offense, North Carolina, y'all don't know how to do chicken wings at all.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I did eat. I was in Buffalo one time. We were playing Canisius when I was in college, and I went to like Jim Kelly's restaurant, and we had buffalo wings, and I think we had, you order wings and you get like 3 wings, and they looked like they were like, I don't know, like pterodactyl wings. They were huge. They were just like you couldn't eat them all, but they have a different flavor. That's where they created them.
Here they serve everything with ranch dressing, and that is such blasphemy in Buffalo. It is always chunky blue cheese.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, everything is ranch down here, and it's just no, you cannot serve ranch dressing with chicken wings. No.
All right, listen, we're gonna hit the break, and I want to talk more about your journey to the half marathon, from it's kind of like your training and how you went from 5K to half marathon, which is an amazing accomplishment, and we'll talk about that when we come back from the break with Tracy Kachur. Hey guys, my friend Lauren is creating an incredible resource for runners and triathletes. It's called raceadvisors.com. She has amassed a list of thousands of races, 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, marathons, ultramarathons, and triathlons, and anything in between. If you're thinking about running a race, look it up and check out the reviews. Have a favorite race of your own? Look it up. See what others have to say about it. Or better yet, leave a review of your own. raceadvisors.com. Read it, race it, review it. I may not have a lot of hair, but I tell you, I know style when I see it. And I know you guys and gals with the flowing locks, you need something functional to keep that hair out of your face when you go on your daily run. And I have just the thing for you. It's called Greasy Girl Headbands. And I know what it sounds like, but it's not spelled that way. It's GREECIE, girlheadbands.com. They make headbands that are specially designed for the runner to keep that hair out of your face, out of your eyes when you're out there on your daily run. So check them out. GreasyGirlHeadbands.com, GREECIE, and find a design that's perfect for you. All right, we are back now from break with Tracy Kachur. Tracy, I want to talk a little bit more about this half marathon, because we kind of, we talked about the RA a lot, and we talked about sort of the effects that it's had on you. And then you started running, and you said you really wanted to run that first 5K, and you didn't care about pace or anything like that. You just wanted to be able to say that you did a 5K. And now you made it all the way to a half marathon. When did you finish the half marathon, by the way? I think you mentioned it, but that was recent?
Yeah, it was the race 13.1 in Raleigh, and I finished in 3 hours and 5 minutes.
Okay, so
which is pretty good, because it was extremely hot that morning. The gun time, it was about 72, 73 degrees and pretty muggy, like 80% humidity, and the course for that particular race is extremely hilly. I mean, Raleigh is a very hilly area. There's not a lot of flat areas to run. So I chose a very challenging race.
Right.
And I had actually completed the 10K there last year, but they had avoided the finish up Laster Hill Road, which anybody who's run that knows it really well. It's a complete uphill finish, and it's honestly, I walked that last little bit because I just couldn't. The last 2 times I was able to run, but to have mile 12 almost completely uphill, you've got to be kidding me.
It's like they should put an escalator on the side, I think,
Yeah, exactly.
Did you know the hill was there when you started the race, or did it just kind of hit you by surprise?
Oh, no, I knew. I had actually did a test run, just did a 5-miler the week before just to see what it was like. And I knew I was going to have to walk it. I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to run. I mean, just the verticalness of that hill is like, there's just no way.
It's not a running thing.
Mile 12, and being mile 12, I knew I was going to be pretty much spent. The best part was that my husband, Chris, who did the 10K, he wasn't ready for the half marathon, was actually waiting for me at mile 12 and walked it with me, which
that's cool.
That's the sign of that is the sign of true love right there.
He doesn't have the RA, so he has got no excuses. He should be doing the half.
Yeah, well, he felt he didn't train as much as I did.
All right,
so,
we'll get him a break. Maybe you get him.
Yeah, he said nope, wasn't ready.
Get him out there next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
When did you set your sights on a half marathon? When did you feel like, obviously after you did the 5K, and now you said you did the 10K last year. So was it like after the 10K, you were like, well, maybe next year I'll try the half?
I did 2 10Ks last year. I did one in June, and then I did one in October. And a friend of mine was like, you really should think about a half marathon. If you can do a 10K, you can do a half marathon. I'm like, I don't know. So I thought about it. And when January rolled around, I was thinking about what my running goals were going to be. I said, maybe I could do a half marathon. Let's just see what happens. And so I just, looking at different training plans and adding mileage to my long runs on a weekly basis. My running partner, my one girlfriend of mine, she and I, she's the one person who can get me up to go running at 6 o'clock in the morning because I'm not a person.
I need one of those.
She was trained in the... I know, right? But she was trained in the Galloway method, and so she got me into the 1-1 interval, walk 1 minute, run 30-second intervals, and that really helped with training for my half marathons. Leah, thank you. I owe you big.
Shout out to Leah there. That's a good friend getting you up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I definitely need one of those some days. I set my alarm this morning for 5 a.m. and I blew through it. I just went back to snooze land. But yeah, that's a great story. So, did you have any concern going into it that you might not finish, or you were pretty confident at that point? It sounds like you built up your mileage and you were pretty comfortable.
I was a little nervous in April because I was having some tendonitis in my knee, and it kind of slowed my mileage down. And I was really concerned about that because I was thinking, am I going to be able to complete, because I knew that the race was going to be in June. And I said, well, I'm not going to do any races. There are a couple of 5 I like to do in April and May, but I just said, no, I need to, 1, focus on getting this tendonitis under control, and then 2, just focus on the half marathon training and just not do any races and just stick to my regular training plan, running with Leah, running with the run club that I run with here in Forest, North Carolina, and just doing my long runs on the weekends and just stick to the plan. So that was really the most important thing.
And so what was the feeling like when you crossed the finish line? Was it like, was it sort of an elation type of moment where you're like, oh my, like, was it, you're smiling. So,
yeah.
So it sounds like,
yeah, it was like holy, and I probably have a tendency to swear, so maybe I shouldn't. We don't want the FCC coming after you, but it was like, holy crap, I can't believe I did this. And I mean, it was just like, I'm still in shock over it because I still remember days walk, and I even remember this past January when we had a pretty bad cold snap here in Raleigh, and it was like right at the beginning of January, and I was trying to also finish my proposal for my dissertation, and between the cold and the stress and everything, I went into a very bad flare-up of the illness and had to go on a steroid taper, 12 days of decreasing prednisone tablets, and thinking, geez, I just thinking about doing this half marathon now, and how am I going to do that? And then now, like, wow, I was able to actually finish it. It's amazing. My rheumatologist says I'm her poster child. So
yeah, I would say so.
I'm amazed that I was, just able to say, yes, I finished. I actually finished it.
So, that friend that you have that said, if you can run a 10K, you can run a half. Now, is that friend telling you perhaps if you run a half, you could run a full?
He hasn't yet. I haven't talked to him. I'm sure that he will probably say, yes, you can run a half marathon, and no, Chad, I cannot run a full marathon. If I've already done a half marathon, I'm not crazy. So, but no, I don't think so. I think with finishing my dissertation and going into this new career, I just don't think I have the time to focus on marathon training, because I think it's a different beast. And I've also seen what can happen to people, what it could do with the RA. And so I'm not even going there.
Yeah, I hear you. Now, I mean, I would guess that there's some part of you that at least wants to run another half.
Oh yeah, after I posted on my Twitter feed that I was, feeling pretty good the day after my half, I have a great massage therapist that, worked all the kinks out after my half marathon. So I said, wow, which one should I do next? Maybe I should. And kind of like Kate was saying about traveling, as I would love to do that, just to meet up with some folks and let's do this. So yeah. But, I guess part also depends on, I'm in the study phase of my dissertation, so it's, getting my study together and doing my interviews and things like that. So probably wouldn't be until the end of the year before I could even consider doing another half.
Yeah, you got to prioritize all those things. And I think everyone none of us are, well, there's a handful of people out there that maybe are professional runners, but really none of us probably listen to the show are professional runners. So it's like, for everyone kind of has that sort of that same issue where it's like, you can't, especially like, so I'm doing Ironman training, and it's like, well, actually I'm not doing Ironman training. That's a big problem. That's for another podcast. But it can take over your life, and certainly, the marathon is a different animal than the half marathon. But I think it's also true that once you kind of get into a routine where, like you said, you kind of build up during the week, and then you kind of do those long runs on the weekend. You kind of get that routine going. At least you can maintain, and hopefully you can continue doing halves. I think that's certainly a realistic goal for you.
I think so. And also for me, part of running is more psychological and more mental. I joke that I run to stay sane. Having a chronic illness, and also anyone who's gone through the PhD process or just any kind of stressful career or situation needs an outlet for that. And for me, it's always been running. It's always been that piece that just helps me center and balance myself, work through things. I think part of my dissertation was actually written while running, because I could run things through my head, no pun intended, and just kind of work through some stuff. And so there is the mental health aspect, I think, that comes with running. Yeah,
I totally agree, and we hear that a lot when it comes to this sport. There's a lot of, I guess we're all mental, but it's it's like there's a certain stress relieving sort of portion of running, and it's a you can kind of get out by yourself and be in your own thoughts and do something productive with your time, as opposed to like for me, I would sit into I would have like other vices like watching TV way too much, or playing video games, or doing other things that weren't as productive. And yeah, they keep my mind off things, but they don't ever let me work on my problems or work on other things, or have other ideas that maybe come from like creative ideas, like the podcast or anything like that. There's something about running that just sort of helps that mental aspect. I think for pretty much probably for all of us to a certain degree, but you certainly mentioned that. I hesitate to mention this because it's sort of fresh, but there was news out today that Kate Spade kind committed suicide, which is extremely sad. She was 55 years old. She has a
Yeah.
family, which you tweeted about, and you mentioned depression for yourself. And I know that, like, I went through really kind of troubling times when I got into this sport, and it helped me deal with my depression. And I'm kind of assuming that is the same for you. And I again, this is like a touchy subject, so if you don't need to answer, you don't have to.
Oh no, it is, and you know, I'm a huge Kate Spade fan. I have a lot of her products, and it was sad to hear that. And I've lost a couple of very close friends to suicide, and having a chronic illness, there is that depression that comes with it, and I'm very open about my battles with anxiety and depression with having a chronic illness. And, you know, I'm grateful to have running as an outlet as well as medication, and having, you know, gone in for therapy tune-ups when things get really difficult. And I think it's sad that, you know, there's still such a stigma with mental health. And I hope that people find some outlet, or at least find a space or a person that they can go to, but sometimes it's just not possible. And I think we just need more understanding about how mental illness works, and you know, what toll it does take on folks.
Certainly. And you know, just doing this podcast, like you come across it often, because I think, you know, running to a certain degree is a coping mechanism. And we all kind of use it. Well, not all of us, but, you know, a lot of us use it for that. But it's a good coping mechanism. It's, you know, it's something it's positive. You know, I mean, it's better than, you know, hitting the bar or something like that, you know? So, yeah. You know, I think in a way it you know, it definitely helps. So, yeah, I mean, it's sad news, and you know, and I've interviewed someone on the podcast who had close relatives who committed suicide, and she raised a lot of money for Suicide Foundation. And it is, you know, it is something that it seems like, you know, like you said, there's a sort of a stigma against on mental health, and I think depression as a kind of as a whole. I'm stammering here because it's a tough topic to talk about, you know.
Oh, absolutely. It really is. I think, you know, if people were really honest and it was totally anonymous, the number of people that would admit that they've had a depressive episode or something to that extent, the numbers would be staggering, because we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to admit that, you know, we have those thoughts or have those feelings. You know, we're supposed to be, you know, just suck it up, or, you know, buck up, little camper. Well, I think of that. Right. I think of that line. I think of that line from that movie. I can't remember the name of it, but it's just, you know, it's sad. And you know, I even see comments from people, and it's like you just don't get it. It's not just a little bit of sadness. It really can be very, very debilitating. Yeah. And for some folks, it's unbearable. You know, it ends up going that far. It's unbearable. Right. Yeah. It's
unbearable, and it's it's sad. But you know, I don't really want to end the podcast here on sort of like this downer note. I want to celebrate sort of what you've done and what you've achieved over the last few years. I think it's incredible. I think that you're sort of a case that, you know, other people that have RA can sort of look at you and say, hey, look, you know, this is something that I can work on, that I can try to overcome, to go from not being able to run because the pain was so intense, to really kind of changing your whole life around, taking on a new career, hitting that 5K, doing those 10Ks, and now doing the half while you're doing a dissertation. It's like, you're a busy lady, but I mean, look what you've done. It's been very impressive. So,
well, thank you. Thank you so much. And I've always been a huge advocate for the autoimmune folks out there. And what I tell people is, you know, talk to your doctors, work with your physicians to find what works for you, because what works for me may not necessarily, you know, work for you. Start slowly, you know, find something that you can do, even if it's a little bit of walking. I mean, maybe you don't want to run, but, you know, there's something that you can do to help slowly take back your life, because this disease takes away so much from people. And if you can claim a little bit of your life back, that's what that's winning,
Yeah.
to be quite honest.
Yeah,
there is no cure for this disease. There is none. It's only managing it and trying to maintain and trying to keep the disease from progressing.
Right. And I think the message that you give sort of, it extends beyond just, people with RA or with autoimmune issues, really to anyone. I mean, it's those first few steps and walking and then running and then just kind of, getting involved with it and finding that and really using that as a productive means to deal with stress and deal with other things, with pain and that kind of thing. But I really, Tracy, I thank you so much for coming on the show. I really had a blast. It was a good conversation, even though we got a little sad at the end. But I'm impressed with all you've done. And so next week, I think I have a British guy coming on. I think next week I have a British guy coming on the show, Greg Leach. I want to say it's pronounced Leach. It's Leitch. I'm going to go with that until I talk to him. I thank Tracy Kachur for coming on the show today and sharing her story. It was an incredible story. And until next week, always remember, when it comes to running, I'm no expert. I'm just ordinary.